All right, what's going on, y'all? We're back, and this is part two to the reaction of Sean Payton being named as the head coach. Today, they actually had the press conference, and a lot of good things that I've been hearing. Of course, I wasn't able to catch it live. I was at work at the time, which is unfortunate, but hey, it is what it is, you know. You got to be able to do what you can. I'm just basically doing that. But all the same here, I just want to go into a couple of things here. It was really interesting, a lot of the things that I wound up learning, specifically the fact that apparently Russell Wilson had his own personal quarterbacks coach that was in on everything from film study to practices. Thinking he was probably there for OTAs or whatever it was whenever Russ first reported, but whenever that happened, I bet you dude was there. And he was there all throughout from beginning to the bitter end of this season. But according to a clip that was played as I was listening to the Mile High Huddle podcast and their gut reaction to the press conference, they actually asked Sean Payton about that. He said he was aware of it and basically made it clear it won't be going down anymore, which I'm absolutely here for. I mean, if nothing else, you come in, you're putting your foot down right away. That's literally the way that it should be in situations like this. But the fact that Russ actually had his own personal coach, and even more wildly than that, I didn't even realize Russ had an office. Like, Russ actually had an office. Like, I'm learning of some of the wildest things when it comes to this dude. And if we're being perfectly honest here, that just isn't gonna fly in this situation. And not only does it make sense as to how things wound up going so awry the way that they did throughout the earlier parts of the season and pretty much all throughout, I guess you could say up until about Kansas City or whatever, I don't know. But either way, just that. But not only that, a lot of the things as far as what was happening between Russ and Pete Carroll out in Seattle, wow, like that I can actually talk here, but with what happened between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson out in Seattle, I mean, it's all actually making sense now. And, you know, I gotta say that, you know, this is absolutely a welcome change with Sean Payton coming in, because again, he's putting the foot down right away and he's just nipping a lot of these things in the bud, as he absolutely should. And another way that he's going about making this happen is bringing in now former New Orleans Saints offensive O-line assistant coach Zach Strife, and is bringing him in as the offensive line coach. I mean, I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not going to argue with that at all. I mean, despite what the numbers have looked like and I guess the overall results that have come along, particularly ever since Sean Payton stepped away from the Saints, I mean, if nothing else, one thing that has held up with the Saints over the years since then has been the offensive line. Now, they've gone from Drew Brees, I believe, to Jameis Winston, to Trevor Siemian and Andy Dalton, amongst maybe one or two others that I may have been forgetting about. But the fact of the matter is, you know, the instability of that offense had nothing to do with the offensive line. They've been holding their weight up. It doesn't help, however, that you've had a guy like Michael Thomas who just basically went about things the way that he did. I'm not going to go into those details. And interestingly enough, people are talking about Payton possibly bringing him out here. We'll see about that. Either way, I mean, I like the move of bringing in Zach Strife. That's going to be very, very much welcome. I mean, if nothing else, I would say that would probably be just as good, maybe even better than bringing back Mike Munchak, which, if nothing else, I don't know why Hackett didn't keep him around, because clearly that would have helped significantly. But who knows? I mean, from that point forward, it just depends on the pieces that come together with the offensive line. A lot of talk is the only surefires are going to be Garrett Bowles and Quinn Miners. I mean, the thing about Bowles is, will he be ready for training camp? Because if he is, then great. But having broken his leg the way that he did, and it was actually pretty nasty the way that he did, I don't know that he would necessarily start the season. But if he does, great. And dude's actually a freak of a human being, if that's the case, because I mean, just with the way that happened, you know, you don't just recover from that and it be a short fix. I mean, I've dealt with a broken leg. Granted, I was all of 8 years old at the time, but yeah, that takes some time to come back from. But nonetheless, and of course, I wasn't an NFL offensive lineman either, so let's just get that out of the way. But anyhow, more interestingly than that is going to be the rest of the coaching staff and what Sean Payton does to fill those voids, particularly offensive coordinator. Joe Lombardi's been mentioned. Once again, Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, has been mentioned. And even more so to that point, his contract with the Chiefs is up this season. So once the Super Bowl is come and gone, he'll be probably on his way out the door. I mean, I wouldn't say no to him coming in as an offensive coordinator, but simultaneously, however, just the fact that he's had as much trouble as he has had to find a job as a head coach over recent years, I don't know necessarily that that's going to be the way to go, but I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I kind of doubt that he comes out to Denver necessarily, but anything's possible. I wouldn't say no to that, and it would give us quite an inside track of being able to handle Kansas City moving forward. Same thing would be the case with Matt Nagy, who is former head coach of the Chicago Bears and is also former offensive coach, offensive assistant under Andy Reid. Same thing there. We would get a lot of insight on trade secrets and such. So not going to say no to that, but not real sure how likely that is. Nagy at least does have some ties with Sean Payton, but same could be said with Joe Lombardi. Dan Rashar, I believe is his name, was also an assistant under Sean Payton, as was Doug Marrone, former Bills and Jags head coach, was OC for the Saints from 06 to 08. And then, of course, Aaron Cromer, who was a Saints assistant, as well as the interim head coach during Bountygate, along with being an offensive coordinator for the Bears and the Bills. David Shaw, this one's an interesting one. He is the Stanford head coach, and I guess he's looking to leave, but he has ties with ownership, particularly Condoleezza Rice, who I believe is a Stanford alum, but she's also from that area, so there's that. That aside, the more intriguing aspect of this, and a lot of this actually unfolded today as well, candidate in the running for defensive coordinator is no longer in the running, as Brian Flores, I repeat, Brian Flores, is now the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. I bring that up, and that's interesting for the fact that in that lawsuit that he filed, the Denver Broncos were mentioned. I mean, that was Elway and Joe Ellis, but they're no longer in the picture, so that's not an issue, but doesn't matter if it's an issue or not because he's not going to be here. So there's that. But it was real wild that the Broncos actually got permission from the Steelers, as he was an assistant defensive coach for the Steelers. But he's going to Minnesota. Cool on that, but I wouldn't have said no to that. Another name is Sean Desai, who is a defensive coach, I believe the coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. And the thing with him is that he actually has ties to Vic Fangio, who, interestingly enough, was being looked at to be brought back as a defensive coordinator. The defensive coordinator for the Broncos, glad for him that he took the Miami offer. It was a better offer, and it would have been a slap in the face for him to come back. I'm just going to leave it at that. Another also interesting name to bring up is Mike Zimmer, which a lot of people give this guy a lot of crap, and I get it. His run as a head coach for the Vikings did not go very well at all. It was actually quite disappointing, but at the same time, it's not like he can't succeed as a coordinator. That's kind of how these things have worked out. Look at Jim Schwartz, who I think is still now on the staff for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not real sure. Actually, no, I take that back. He's on a different staff. I believe he got hired somewhere. I forget where that was, but either way, he was on that championship staff for the Philadelphia Eagles after having a not-so-glorious run with the Detroit Lions. But then again, who can actually say that other than maybe Dan Campbell now, who might actually be onto something out there? But, I mean, all the same, between Desai and Zimmer, I won't say no to that. Chris Richard, who was the defensive coordinator for the Saints when with Sean Payton, I mean, none of those are names that I would say no to. But Desai, being that he has ties to Fangio, and the fact that that defense with Chicago was as successful as it was, sign me up for that too. Any of these are good options. Looking forward to what they wind up doing. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you see filling the rest of the voids on the staff? And what else would you like to see changed as we ring in a new era of Broncos football? But all the same, thanks for being here. Just like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy. And look forward to part 3. I'll be uploading this. It's currently 9:32 right now. And I'll be uploading this in the morning. I love that I can talk. It's late, if you couldn't tell, but or it's getting late anyway. But yeah, look forward to this being uploaded. And after I upload this, I'll be recording part 3, where I talk about potential free agents and draft picks. Of course, that won't happen until the 3rd round, but I mean, it is what it is. We're on to bigger and better things, I would like to think. But that being said, again, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. Stay tuned, and yeah, look forward to more.